I did. We did. I recorded all last week's thing.
No sound.
No sound. No. I still have no idea why. I have no idea. But I did a test earlier to make sure I had sound. And I mean, I can see that the mic is working. It's showing that I have sound. So hopefully this week we will have sound. So we're probably going to a few minutes. We're missing one of our people, and she's on her way and doesn't live too far. So we're going to wait just a few minutes, and we can talk to the guy over there.
Robert
What's his last name? I'm not the only one.
White, I think.
Robert White. Okay.
Hey,
I know Flo. I know.
hold me to the fire on that one. I think that's what.
Like he may not want to come back because
He was here last year.
well yeah. But I'm just saying when somebody comes in and they kind of get
He was telling
inundated.
why he decided to come to this church. You were
Yeah.
there.
What did he say? I didn't.
Well, the fact that the first week
Mhm.
that you had the kids come down and talk to them,
Okay.
Eye to eye.
Okay.
and that really impressed him.
Okay.
What did he say? He had
He
a son
said
or something.
He has a son, and when he was little, he would set him on his lap, and they would talk eye to eye.
Mm-hmm. Verse 9, and the one what we were talking about, what verse 5 talks about is there's been a transition. We're now no longer under Nebuchadnezzar. Actually, the king. What this says, but it's probably Belshazzar's father, official, but not necessarily the king the way we would think of the king. Anyway, so they're having a drunken feast. He has a feast with them. They fill them with wine and drink them as a part of their drunken. On the wall, somewhere next to the lampstand, so just so we know where it's at, next to the lampstand, this finger comes down and it writes on the wall. And the Belshazzar says, whoever can read the ribbon, a chain of gold around their neck, and rank third in the and the king's wise men come in, but they can't very worry because he thinks that something bad is going on, which it is. It is. I mean, it's bad. So anyway, so verse 10, the queen, and it's always, it's something, the discussion of the king and his lords came into the banquet hall. So she wasn't even at this party. She had to have been, because he was there with his lords and his wives and his concubines. So his wife was there, but maybe he had sent them off.
This is his mother.
This is the queen. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So that's right. It's his mother. So the queen would be his mother because he's not the king. That's a good point. Okay, so it's his mother. She comes into the banquet hall, and she says, "O king, live forever." So she refers to him as king, even though maybe that's not who it was. Yeah, mine does have a footnote that says the queen was the queen mother. She's the wife of either he's the king and she's his mom, or anyway. So she's not his wife. She's the wife, right?
This says she could have been 1, the wife of Nebuchadnezzar, or 2, the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar and wife of Nabonidus, or the wife of Nabonidus, but not the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. That's real clear.
But it's not his wife.
No.
That's the thing that it's getting at. It's a mother or grandmother, something along those lines. Okay, so she comes in and says, "O king." So they're kind of they treat him as a king, and remember, in the translation, we're reading English, and so the English translation, and this is written in Aramaic. And so it's the title king, and in fact, my Bible, I don't know about yours, but mine, king is not capitalized.
No.
It's a little k. So it's not really, the king is not his name or his title. It may be a title that refers to whoever's in power right there at that point, So it's not, she's not saying that he's the king the king, but whoever that is. Lifford. Oh, and I did want to tell you, I did go look earlier. I talked about the whenever Nebuchadnezzar, whenever he had come back from being a wild animal type thing, that he had talked about the Most High. And so I went and looked at the Hebrew English translations, and actually it is not the name of the Most High. Is it used there in Daniel is not the name of God. It's not, like I said, it's not one of those names. But in that version in English, and I went back and looked, and I think it is true. No, it's not. In this one, it does capitalize Most High. In the other one, it doesn't. It's most is not capitalized, and then high, I don't know if it is or not, but it's not. It is not a name for God. It's so he's not referring to him like as the Hebrew God. It's a different kind of title. So just I said I would look it up, and I didn't. I tried to print it out, and I couldn't get it to print. So anyway,
It's capitalized.
yes.
Yeah, mine are 3 words. You can't-
Well, and yeah, but it's not one of the names that we think of as a name for God. Okay, so King live forever. Do not let your thoughts terrify you, or your face grow pale. Which I think is interesting, because really you can't really keep your face from growing pale. I mean, it's if you go pale, you go pale. You can't really control that. Now, whether or not you let your thoughts terrify you, that you can control. There is a man in your kingdom who is endowed with the spirit of the holy gods, or the holy divine spirit. In the days of your father, and actually it would be his grandfather, he was found to have enlightenment, understanding, and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods. Your father or grandfather, King Nebuchadnezzar, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and diviners, because he was an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Okay, Belteshazzar. Now we're actually at a point where you have Belshazzar and Belteshazzar in the same story. Let's make it any more confusing, right? Now let Daniel. So it's interesting that she decides to call him Daniel. Thanks. That's good. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give an interpretation. So, I mean, I think that's kind of cool that he obviously time has passed, and he has not been active since Nebuchadnezzar has died. And so, but he's not forgotten. I mean, he's somewhere probably doing something official, but when this big thing happens and Belshazzar is so worried and the other people can't do it, the queen mother remembers. She remembers this guy Daniel that was so good at this kind of thing, and whom Nebuchadnezzar depended on. I mean, that's, Nebuchadnezzar really depended on him. Okay, so 13. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king said to Daniel, "So you are Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah." And I'm not going to, when he says my father, he's talking Nebuchadnezzar, even though Nebuchadnezzar and his father. And when it keeps referring to him as the king, it's little k, so it's the ruler or something. But we're just going to go with it the way it's written. I have heard of you that a spirit of the gods, or a divine Holy Spirit, is in you, and then enlightenment, understanding, and excellent wisdom are found in you. Which I think that's a pretty good reputation. I wouldn't mind having that reputation. It's a pretty good thing.
Buttering him up.
But buttery, okay, could be buttering him up. I've heard good things about you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and tell me its interpretation. But they were not able to give the interpretation of the matter. But I've heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now, if you are able to read the writing and tell me its interpretation, You shall be clothed in purple. Purple is the royal color. So to be able for him to have a royal purple garment would be a big, big deal. I mean, that's a big thing.
Purple was an expensive dye.
Yes,
Okay.
very, very expensive. Right. You will have a chain of gold around your neck, which he's going to wear a purpley robe and a chain. He could be his own hip hop artist. Could be a rapper, right? Belshazzar the rapper, and rank third in the kingdom. Okay, so he's gonna, which is the same thing that he said to the other guys. He's not doing anything different. He told them earlier in verse 7. He told them the same thing, that they would, if they interpret it, whoever interprets it gets purple robe or purple cloth, gold chain, ranked third in the kingdom. Okay. So then Daniel, and let's be clear. I feel at this point, Daniel has stood there and looked around. He's looked around. He's already seen what's on the wall, and he's probably also already seen the goblets that are laying there, sitting on the table. And he knows they're from the temple in Jerusalem, because I'm sure they've got markings and things he would recognize. And so he knows what's going on. He knows what's going on, and he's not naive. He's not young at this point. He is older. He knows what's going on, and he's willing. He's stuck his neck out before, and he's going to do it again. Now that it's one of those things that it's possible that the other people who came in, the magicians and enchanters and Chaldeans and diviners, could have read what's on the wall. But again, they read it and recognized that it wasn't good and it was going to be bad news, and they didn't want to give bad news to this new king guy, because they didn't know what would happen. But Daniel comes in, and I'm sure Daniel recognizes it's not good news, but Daniel doesn't care. And then probably, Daniel's never cared, but also the fact that the goblets from the temple are sitting there is probably, he's probably insulted, and he's probably not happy. So the idea that it's a bad interpretation is fine with him. Let's go, So Daniel answers the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, or give your rewards to someone else." So in other words, I don't want your gifts. I don't want your gifts. I don't need your gifts. I don't keep them for yourself, or give them to somebody else you want to give them to. I don't want them. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and let him know the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar kingship, greatness, glory, and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. He killed those he wanted to kill, kept alive those he wanted to keep alive, honored those he wanted to honor, and degraded those he wanted to degrade. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened so that he acted proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and his glory was stripped from him. He was driven from human society, and his mind was made that of an animal. His dwelling was with the wild asses, which I think is interesting. That wasn't one we talked about earlier. His dwelling was with the wild asses. He was fed grass like oxen, and his body was bathed with the dew of heaven, until he learned that the Most High God has sovereignty over the kingdoms of mortals and set over it whomever he will. So, in a sense, he retells the story of Nebuchadnezzar that we did last week. That's the story. Remember that Nebuchadnezzar has the dream, and this is what's going to happen. The trees cut down and all of that. So he retells that. And he's telling it not just so this young punk, in my mind, knows what happened, because probably we would assume maybe he already has heard that or whatever. But more importantly, he recognizes the power of God, right? And one thing, the one thing that he doesn't mention in this that really does play a part in all this is that Nebuchadnezzar was uh, the fact that the way he did things, the way the Babylonians did things when they conquered at territories, they took people and they brought them in mass and set them up in their kingdom, um, and they stripped the temple of all of this, all of the templeware, and they brought it and they put it in the treasury and set it there, but they didn't do anything with it. They didn't melt it down. They didn't destroy it or damage it or anything. They were pretty respectful under Nebuchadnezzar of other countries and their gods. Because I mean, in my mind, a big part of that is they recognize that if you show disrespect to their gods or to their what they perceive to be important, their god and their temple and whatever, you're fomenting problems. You're going to cause problems for yourself in the long run. You're better off being respectful, and that was how Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuchadnezzar and what he doesn't. I mean, he's saying as well is he was a great and mighty king. He could have done anything he wanted to. He killed who he wanted to kill and let live who he wanted to let live. He could do all of these things, but when he decided that he was all that in a bag of chips and was better than even God showed him, right? I mean, God struck him and he becomes some kind of he's well, I don't remember whatever that term was that I read last week, but he's insane in such a way that he thinks he's an animal, and so he really, and then once he comes to his senses, he recognizes that the God of the Most High is even stronger than he is, and so that's he's in a sense saying, look, you're dealing with this power that you don't know anything about. Nebuchadnezzar knew about this power, and he was respectful, but even him, he got sideways with it, and it cost him. And so, I think he's kind of giving him that summary of the history to let him know who he's dealing with, right? So 22, and you, Belshazzar, his son or grandson, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. So you know the history. I mean, I'm just repeating that what you already know. You knew that. You knew you should be humble, right? You mean that's the lesson that was learned. You should have known that. You have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. The vessels of his temple you have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have been drinking wine from them. Not only did you drink out of them, that was bad enough, but you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know. So you've used the vessels of God's temple to praise all of these other gods that you all worship that are nothing. They're pieces of metal or stone or wood or whatever, right? They're nothing. They don't see or hear or know. They have no power. But the God in whose power is your very breath, the God who can take your very breath, and to whom belong all your ways, you have not honored. So you've dishonored God. So he hasn't even gotten to the writing on the wall yet, right? He's basically telling him, in a sense, what he's doing is, this is why the writing is on the wall, just so you know that, okay? This is what you have done that caused all of this. Now, he may not say it that way, but that's what he's doing, right? So from his presence, the hand was sent, or the finger, I'm not going to say what I'm thinking, was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. Okay, so that's the words that were inscribed on the wall. Mene, M-E-N-E, Tekel, T-E-K-E-L, and Parson. So now I'm gonna. Yours probably may have. Mina is going to refer to numbers, the idea of and he'll interpret that, but Mina is a reference to number, and there's two of them. So I mean, a half. I think they're a half of something. So two of them means one whole, a number. Tekel is actually the word for shekel, and shekel is not just money, but it's measurement, weight, specifically. So mina, number, tekel or shekel, weight, and then parson is divide, is to split in half or to divide. Okay, so those are Aramaic words. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene. So mene, which is this word for number, right? God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. So no, it's not one of those things. God has set the number, and the number is 4,000, whatever. So you're 10 years in the future, God's going to do. No, he's saying God has set the number of days, and you've run out, right? That's it.
So this is the termination of his.
That's the interpretation. Now, I don't know that it means literally that it ends that instant, but I get the idea. He's announcing that it's not long. I mean, it's coming. You're just about done. Yeah. Okay. Tekel or shekel, you have been weighed on the scale and found wanting. All right. You've been weighed and found wanting. And then Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So days are numbered. Tekel, you are weighed and found wanting. Perez, kingdom is divided. That last one is I mean that's what is read and what is the way it's interpreted, even though actually the Babylonians are not, their kingdom, the Babylonian kingdom is not conquered and divided into two halves with part ruled by the Medes and part ruled by the Persians. Actually, the Persians and the Medes are one group and now there is in Daniel and some historians think possibly that there was a leader of the Persians at the beginning, this Darius, who is Mede, who was born Mede, and that's one of the kingdoms or areas. So and then following Darius would be Cyrus, and Cyrus is Persian. So that's where the Mede Persian. It's called the Medo-Persian Empire, but it's not exactly divided. But anyway, so the interpretation is you're done for. Your days are numbered. You've been weighed, and you have, you've been found wanting, and your kingdom is going to be divided. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed in purple. A chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made concerning him that he should rank third in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed. And Chaldean in that case, Babylonian, that's a term that they were using, but Babylonian is how we would refer to him. He was killed. And Darius the Mede received the kingdom being about 62 years old. And so that is the end of, I mean, and historically, if it worked exactly that way, I don't know. And I don't know that there's historical evidence that's that detailed about how it happens. But Babylonia will fall. The Babylonian Empire will fall to the Medo-Persian Empire. And that's and Medo-Persians are Babylon. Just so you know, Babylon is in modern day Iraq. In fact, Saddam Hussein was trying to rebuild the city of Babylon at one point. I mean, they did a lot of work there. And the Persian Empire. I mean, what do we call modern? What do we call Persia today? You know, what country do
Iran.
we? Iran, right? It's Iranian, and that's why. So that's why Iraqi. Well, it's one of the reasons Iraqis are and Iranians are not the same culturally. They don't come from the same people. Now they're also, for the most part, a lot of them not the same Islamic group. I think the Iraqis are Sunnis. Are they? I think they're Sunni, and whereas the Iranians are Shia, and so they're different there. But it's also even from before that they're different, and Iranians will a lot of times refer to themselves as Persians. I mean that's a term that they use. So now we have a transition not only of kingship from Nabonidus in a sense to Belshazzar and then now to Darius, but we actually have a transition of control from the Babylonians to the Persians. And so, I mean, and Daniel survived. Daniel goes through all of this, which is fairly amazing. I mean, that he would be an advisor to Belshazzar one day, and then he's going to be dealing with Darius and the leadership of the Persians the next. I mean, that's not what you would think would happen.
And that goes back to the vision or dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. And that ended the head of gold.
Okay. The
end of his family ended the head of gold.
Okay, right.
And so we start with silver.
Okay, yeah, right. Remember the Colossus, the big statue thing that the head the gold was the Babylonians, and then when the Babylonians fall, you get the silver, which was the upper body, I think, or something like that, which is the Persians. The Persians. Okay, so we're now in chapter 6. We have ended the story of the Babylonians, but now we're going to pick up with the Persians.
My footnote here says that Darius the Mede is not to be confused with Darius the Persian.
Okay.
They are two different.
Okay. Some of the stuff I've read says they're not really exactly sure whether Darius, they're not sure who Darius actually was. There's little, if any, information they can find. In fact, mine says no such person as Darius the Mede is known to history. There are three. Well, this says there are 3 Persian kings named Darius. So I mean, it's one of those that this is this is sort of that in between time of kingdoms, and so who knows? Just because he's not recorded in history doesn't mean he did not exist. It's just remember that the winners write history, and so when the Persians really can fully take control under Cyrus, it may be that Darius is written out of history, and that's why we don't have any record of it. The Egyptians were good about that. The Egyptians didn't like, and there was King Tut, his father. His father was the one that believed there was only one God, and he built a new city, and that was Ra, or Amun-Ra, and so all of the priests of the other gods just hated him and all of that. Well, when he finally died, the people that came in after him hated him, and they went and had his name chiseled off of everything in the whole kingdom where they could find his name. They erased him from history. You take his name off, and he doesn't exist anymore. And so that, and they can do, and they don't have, they do have cuneiform clay tablets of this time, but I don't know that. Well, and there probably are some kind of pillars and those kinds of things, but they were probably constructed more by the Persians, not this whatever this Midian group may have been. And so, like I say, the winners write the history, and when the winners write the history, people can just disappear completely because they don't make it into the books. So, okay, so chapter 6. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps stationed throughout the whole kingdom. So he divides it into little like provinces, right? And 120 of them. So that's a lot of little provinces. And he names them. They're called satraps, and so these are his rulers, right? And over them 3 presidents, including Daniel. To these the satraps gave account so that the king might suffer no loss. So they're kind of giving us the organizational structure, right? 120 provinces. Over those 120 provinces, 3 presidents. So probably each president has 40 satraps. And so the satraps report to the president, and the presidents report to the king. That's the organization. And Daniel is one of the presidents, right? So, okay.
Just that, I was just looking on the next page, there's a real cool diagram right here with that,
Okay.
that body, and then it shows the different kingdoms.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, we might, yeah, we'll see about, see if I can find it and get I might take try to photocopy it or something.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Daniel is one of the presidents, which is kind of interesting term, not the way we would use president. Soon, Daniel distinguished himself above all the other presidents and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to appoint him over the whole kingdom. So in other words, the Daniel is a good administrator. I mean, he's already proven that. Not only does he do the dream interpretation and all of that kind of stuff, but he administers. We've already seen that, and he does an excellent job. And we don't know if it's because he is Jewish and doesn't lives to a higher standard. I mean, could be. I wouldn't be surprised. And as a result of that, if he doesn't allow corruption, then the king makes more money, which is probably what it comes down to in the long run. That would be what I would bet it comes down to, is that in the long run, Darius gets more money, and since he gets more money out of Daniel, that raises Daniel's, and without him being, doing anything dishonest to make it, he just makes sure he leaves out the corruption, and so he gets more money. And so he's going to make Daniel, he's going to now change the structure and make there be the presidents, but then he's going to put Daniel above the presidents, between he and the president, so that he can then tell the other presidents what to do, which maybe he's going to tell them to do away with corruption. Who knows? So the presidents and the satraps tried to find grounds for complaint against Daniel in connection with the kingdom. I mean, they have complaints, right? The complaint is he's about to be made our boss, and we don't like that. But that's not a good complaint. They're trying to find something to get him in trouble on, right? And they can't find anything. Okay, he's there in connection with the kingdom. But they could find no grounds for complaint or any corruption because he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption could be found in him. So he's a straight shooter, no corruption, nothing formal that you can complain about. He wasn't a wild frat boy in college that did things he shouldn't have done. There's none of those things. They couldn't find anything bad about it. The men said, "We shall not find any grounds for complaint against this Daniel, unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. So these guys aren't stupid, right? I mean, they're looking, they want, so what it becomes is we cannot find any complaint against him in the past. And so in a sense, what they're saying is we're going to figure out a way to make a complaint about him in the future. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use his God and his connection with the law of his God. Right. These are not stupid people. I mean, they're in power for a reason. So the presidents, the other two presidents and the satraps conspired and came to the king and said to him, "O King, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps." Now, prefects, this is
Counselors and deputies.
counselors. So like that's more like staff. But
High under the governor.
okay. Under and yours is using governor as in terms instead of presidents. Okay. All right.
No, presidents, governors, counselors, and deputies.
Okay. Well, this one uses presidents, prefects, satraps, counselors, and governors.
Mine has ministers instead of presidents.
Okay, so so different. We're just trying to put terms that we would understand on it, right? But all of us. Now, notice they say all the presidents. Well, obviously, Daniel is not in the all because Daniel's not a part of this because this is all against Daniel. So they're lying at least a little bit, a lot. Right, but they're right. Everybody else, because they're all in on it.
Well, Daniel's already been made above them. He's already the administrator above them all.
Okay, well, okay. Mine. Let me see. Okay, I guess he has. Okay.
He's the administrator.
Okay. And mine actually has a title for that. And the title, because I read it and it said he is the Grand Vizier, Vizier. Vizier. Okay. He's the grand. The king ever planned. Now, see, mine says they plan to appoint Daniel. So I'm not sure that it's for sure that he's been there already or not. So maybe he is, maybe he's not. We don't know. It does. I don't think it really matters in the scheme of things at this point. Okay, but pretty much everybody else except for Daniel, right, are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an edict that whoever prays to anyone, divine or human, for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into a den of lions. Right? So, in other words, we believe that you, O King Darius, are so great that people should pray to you for 30 days and not to anyone else, not to any other god, not to any other human. No, I'm not sure why you would pray to somebody human, but I guess they did. So no praying to anyone else. That we want that as an ordinance. And that's that buttering up, you know? I mean, they're playing on his ego of we think you are so great that people should bow down and pray to you only. And if they don't, they should be thrown into a den of lions. And now, supposedly, the den of lions thing is the kind of thing that they would do in the Persian Empire. That is a way that they would kill political prisoners and stuff like that. That was using lions to rip them to shreds is not. I mean, even the Romans would do that at times. In the arena and stuff. So it's a that's a fairly common and it's gruesome because people don't die immediately. I mean, being mauled by a lion is a pretty bad way to go. Okay, but so that's going to be the punishment. Now, King, establish the edict and sign the document. Put your John Henry right here on the dotted line, so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. So the Medo-Persian Empire has this sort of um, weird understanding of law that once the king has established something, once he's made the edict and signed the document, it can't be changed. Which I don't understand why a king would agree to that. You know what I'm saying? I mean that because
He was subject to flattery, they were kissing his.
well I understand that. I understand why. I understand why that, but I don't understand why they had that law or that part of how they did government in the first place. Why would you have a law that you cannot change? Even the king can't, because at that point one king's hands have been tied by a previous king. I mean, you can't change a royal edict, and so I don't know why they have, but they did, right? So, but they are buttering him up, right? And they're being sure, they're pointing out, establish this so that it can't be changed, according to our rules, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document and interdict, or the edict. All right. So now rule: no praying to anybody unless it is to Darius. Although Daniel knew that the document had been signed, so I'm sure he did not know ahead of time, or he would have been there to argue against it. But it's not like he doesn't know, right? They want to make sure that we understand. It's not like he does this not realizing that he's breaking the law. He knows that he's breaking the law, right? He continued to go to his house, which had windows in its upper room open towards Jerusalem, to get down on his knees 3 times a day, to pray to his God and praise him, just as he had done previously, probably just as he had done his whole life, right? And that sounds, doesn't that sound very familiar? He gets down on his knees facing Jerusalem and prays 3 times a day. Very much, yeah. And I mean, yeah, a very similar kind of thing. A very similar kind of thing. But this is Daniel, and he's doing it now. He's not out in public. He's in his own house. He's in the upper room of his house, but there are windows up there, and so it's going to give them the opportunity to look in and find him. But he's going to keep doing it. He knows the rules against it, but he's going to keep doing it. The conspirators came and found Daniel praying and seeking mercy before his God. So they climbed up a ladder outside his house and looked in the room and saw him praying, so that they could say, yeah, Daniel's been praying. So then the conspirators, approached the king and said concerning the interdict, "O king, did you not sign an interdict that anyone who prays to anyone, divine or human, within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into a den of lions?" Again, they're playing games. Oh, king, do you remember that you signed this interdict that said that no one could, if anyone prayed to anybody but you for 30 days, that they had to be thrown in the lion's den? Do you remember that, O king?
Guess what?
No, yeah. And the king is going to answer, "The thing stands fast, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked." So, yes, I remember that interdict still is in place. 30 days, it's in place. It can't be changed, can't be revoked. Then they responded to the king, "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the interdict you have signed, but he is saying his prayers 3 times a day." When the king heard the charge, he was very much distressed. He was determined to save Daniel. Now, and that tells you something right there, right? They come to him. they've done this thing about, oh, king, do you remember this edict? And he's like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's the way it is. I signed it. It's the rule. We got to do that. And then they're like, this Daniel guy's, he's out there praying. And the king is like, oh crud, what have I done? And he's distressed, and he wants to save Daniel. I mean, he likes Daniel. I mean, he supports. I mean, he elevated Daniel to the highest position in government under him. I mean, he's right under the king. And he wants to save him. And until the sun went down, he made every effort to rescue him. So he's and by every effort, I don't think they're. I mean, I think we don't know what they did. I don't. Maybe he sent someone to Daniel to argue with him and see if he could get Daniel to say that he wasn't praying to his God, that he was praying to Darius. Maybe or to say I won't do it anymore or something like that. I don't. Maybe he had advisors looking at figuring out a way he could break the interdict and not have to enforce it or whatever. We don't know what he does, but he makes every effort to rescue him. Then the conspirators came to the king and said to him, "Know, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and the Persians that no interdict or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed." So with that makes you think he was trying to figure out a way to get it changed. Right, he's dealing with some people to try to figure out if he can get it changed. And then the king gave the command, and Daniel was brought and thrown into the den of lions. I read a thing about how this den may have worked. It is, and this even sounds like what I've seen in terms of the Romans, very similar. That the den was, it's not like a lion's den out in the wild, like a cave that the lions lived in. Because if you did that, how would you throw somebody in without the people throwing somebody in being eaten by the lions too? You know what I'm saying? That probably it was a room carved out of stone in the ground, so that it's open on the top, and then it has doors down below. I'm thinking like in the Colosseum, where you would have rooms under, and then there would be rooms where they could get in and get food to the lion and all that, but they could also, so that there's doors and things on the side at the bottom, but then there's also an open top, and it's so tall that a person could not get out, and the lions couldn't get out. But you can stand at the top and look down on them, right?
Would they have had a grate over?
May have had a grate, maybe not. Don't know. Depends on how tall. If it's tall enough, you wouldn't have needed one, but you might have had one. I mean, that's a possibility, so that you can kind of walk and even look down. I mean, you can just stand above it and look into it. Then the king gave the command, and Daniel was brought and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you faithfully serve, deliver you." That's one of those ones that you know that was said not with sarcasm at all, with true honesty. I mean, he that's a prayer, if you will. He is saying to Daniel, "May your God deliver you." He wants his God to deliver him from the lions, because he doesn't want Daniel to die. He knows that he has been tricked. He recognizes it, but there's nothing he can, because of this stupid, once you put a rule in place, you can't change it thing. He can't do anything about it. But he knows, I mean, to me, he recognizes that Daniel's God is the God who can do all things. And so he is, or at least he thinks, he's hoping he can do all things. And he wants him to deliver Daniel. I mean, to me, that's, we dealt with Nebuchadnezzar, who kind of at times was like that, when it was proven to him the power of God, he was kind of like, oh, your God is the most high and he's great and all that in a bag of chips. But then at times he was like, oh, look at this kingdom I've made for myself and it's also wonderful and God didn't have anything to do with it and God makes him eat with the wild asses and stuff. So and then we get Belshazzar, who is a young punk that doesn't have any belief in anything and doesn't have any respect for Daniel or his God or anything, and he dies almost immediately. But then you have Darius, and Darius is different. Darius recognizes the power of the God Most High. Okay, tell you what, we're going to stop right there. So we will pick up on verse 17 next time. We will get to look at Daniel in the lion's den. In the lion's den. Okay, I'm going to turn this off.
I'm sorry, the pencil. Good catch.